Hi, I'm Dr. Boyce Watkins from Financial Juneteenth, and you saw that this week Donald Trump was just body slammed by the Latino community for some remarks that he made that just baffled a lot of people, hurt a lot of people, and pissed a lot of people off, to be quite frank. And one of the things that I've heard people say repeatedly is that there are things the black community can learn from how the Latino community dealt with Donald Trump and literally trumped him in a matter of hours. So, to understand this, I reached out to one of the smartest people I know from both the black and the Latino community, which is kind of the same thing. We're all part of the same diaspora, and she can explain that more. Is Dr. Monica Ogando. And first, I want to ask Dr. Ogando, how are you doing today?
I am wonderful. Thanks for having me on again.
I am so glad you're here. Now, just so people can know and be clear, you said your family's from the Dominican Republic, correct?
Correct.
So I've always talked to you as a black woman, but then you reached out to me after this Donald Trump thing happened, and you were speaking as a member of the Latino community as well, and kind of saw this as an example or prototype of how to kind of deal with this sort of disrespect that black and Latino people kind of deal with on a regular basis. What was going through your head when you reached out to me and kind of wanted to talk about the Donald Trump controversy?
Well, you and I had had a conversation before where we had a conversation about murders happening, terrorism, domestic terrorism happening, and how the solution was not to march about it and to picket about it, but to rather vote with your dollars. And especially because there's been such a concerted effort to alienate certain people from their right to vote, whether by laws, by intimidation, by logistic inconveniences, etc. And the point that I want to make is a lot of the Latino community, 80% of the people who identify themselves as Latinos in this country, like me, are English speaking, are citizens, are legally allowed to be here. We're not even going to get into the hypocrisy of the immigrant conversation. We'll get to that a little bit later, I'm sure. You have something to say about that. But the point is that regardless of whether you have a legal right to vote, you always have the power to direct your dollars. So whether you're a citizen, whether you're an illegal immigrant, etc., you have access to dollars. And that's what moves organizations such as NBC, such as Macy's, such as the golf organizations that have also spoken out against Donald Trump. Um, I found it funny that Donald Trump said something about, the golf world understands where I'm coming from. They relate to these messages. And they were like, whoa, 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 don't speak for us, because they did not want to fall victim to the backlash that they experienced him. It's like you're gonna go under the bus all by yourself, buddy.
Wow. So I want to ask you this. From your perspective, as a Latino woman, what was it? What did Trump say that offended you the most, and why were you offended?
First of all, I think that people tend to compartmentalize the Latino community as nationalities. And we do not associate that. Like everything that you say about a Mexican, a Puerto Rican, a Dominican, a Cuban, etc., you're pretty much saying it about the Latino community as a whole, because I don't think that the American ethos has that distinction. So when he says Mexicans do this or that, I heard it like, you think I'm doing that, even though I'm not Mexican. You see what I mean? And that's the commonly felt sentiment around the Latino community. That's something that I see the Black American, because we have Black Latinos. We were talking earlier. I consider myself a Black Latino. There's a difference between race and ethnicity, right? So you may have um, Latin people that look like me, that look like you, and you may have some that look like, Britney Spears, right? There's a breadth of racial composition within the Latino community, and I think people sometimes miss that. And so, what offended me the most was the hubris, the hypocrisy of it. There are rapists, and there are gang members, and there are bad people in this country that can hide behind this shroud of citizenship. And I'm not saying that there isn't an immigration issue to be solved. For certain, there is. There has always been. As soon as the United States said, "Send me your tired, your huddled masses, etc." There's been an immigration problem. In fact, this country was built on an immigration problem. Um, so that's not the issue so much as the hubris. And and what I mean by that is, do you really think that you can say something like this on a platform of running this entire and leading this entire country in front of the entire world and basically shun 17% of your population? The Latino community is 17% strong. We are the strongest and the largest growing and the fastest growing minority community in this country. And so to just think you can just say that was like shocking. Imagine saying that about Jews. Imagine saying that about any other communities. Like, no, no, you've got to be kidding me. This is like somebody get the man a psychiatrist. And so the conversation was more about what can we do? And there wasn't a meeting. There was not like a conversation about this in some church pew somewhere. The conversation happened in a boardroom with the president and CEO. What's his name? Alex Nogales is the president and the CEO of the National Hispanic Media Coalition, and he sat there with NBC, with Univision, etc. And I think it's so ironic that the second richest man in the world is Mexican, and he has ties to another media. It's kind of like the Ted Turner, the American Ted Turner. He's like that with the
Is his
Latino
name
community.
Carlos Slim something?
Carlos Slim.
Yeah, is that okay? Go ahead, please.
Yeah. So there was a conversation of you can't, regardless of your personal. They didn't even ask them for their personal opinions. Do you really believe that? Because it's irrelevant. The question became a business issue. You can't stand behind this. It'll hurt your pockets. And so the lesson that I think we all need to learn about this is that yes, there's a morality issue, there's a personal sensibility issue, there's a personal identity issue, but none of that will move people as much as a business issue. And that's what we've seen in this example of the latest affront to another minority community is, yeah, we move dollars, and that's what shifts the things around.
I think that's so interesting. One of the things about this, as I sort of watched this go down, and I was in awe of just how quickly they just, I mean, people just really handled Donald Trump, and I think that he has this reputation of being. A lot of people have always thought he's a racist. I mean, he said things about black people before that just weren't cool at all, and what's interesting to me though too is I get a sense, and you could tell me what I'm thinking here, but I get a sense that that people are taking whatever he said and they are reading between the lines. They're taking into context who said it, not just what was said, right? And sort of connecting that to things he said in the past. Because here's the funny thing, and this is interesting. I want to get your take on this. When I go and I look at it, all these articles to say, okay, what? Let me get a quote. Let me see exactly what he said. Let's quote him so we can, we don't twist his words or anything like that. I can't find a quote. I can't find. I mean, I've looked at several articles this morning and a few while I'm talking to you, and every time it's like you'll see these articles that'll say Donald Trump's racist remarks were etc. And they'll define them as racist remarks and explain why a company got rid of him because he called immigrants drug dealers and rapists, which we know is just a crazy mischaracterization. You can't lump everybody together like that. Doesn't make any sense. But I can't find the actual quote, and I'm wondering if people are sort of saying either a I just feel like what he said was racist because because he's Donald Trump and we know what he meant. And then maybe some other groups are saying, well, we think he's racist because everybody else does now, and we know that the political wind is going in that direction, so we're just going to distance ourselves from this guy. But either way, it seems like you really, I'm getting a sense, I'm feeling power. I'm just feeling, power kind of, it kind of gives you the ability to shape what the opinion is going to be, in the public. Like for example,
Mm-hmm.
for the longest time, no one had a big issue with the Confederate flag because black people didn't have enough power to, as you mentioned, the economic power or political, to just say no, this is wrong, this is racist. So the flag sits up there for a couple hundred years until someone gets the power to actually challenge it. What do you
Mm-hmm.
think? I mean, I'm really curious in terms of exactly, like, if you were to hold someone's feet to the fire and say, okay, give me Donald's quote and explain why that particular quote is racist, what would you say to that?
The conversation of I'm trying to find it too as you're talking.
Yeah, yeah, I,
I'm
I
trying to
encourage
find
people
it.
to look. I really, I mean, and again, it's not me saying
I heard it when he said it.
Mhm.
Here it is. The US has become a dumping ground for everybody else's problems. When Mexico sends its people, objectionable thing number one, they're not sending their best. They're not sending you, speaking to the audience, they're sending people that have a lot of problems and they're bringing those problems to us. He said with us, but I think he meant to us. They're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, they're rapists, and some of them, I assume, are good people. And so the
He
conversation,
said some of them, I assume, are good people.
yeah, kind of like throw it in there.
Wow.
Let's not suck,
Yeah, that's
right? Let's just,
that's funny.
right.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, it seems that, in light of our conversation, I would have been able to easily find the quote, but I'm actually kind of astonished that I haven't, that a lot of the, and I challenge people to go look at a lot of the articles that talk about what happened. Many of them don't actually give the quote, and I think that just, it sometimes speaks to the politics of something where, it's. I just always believe that if I'm offended by something that someone says, I want to be able to sit there and look at what they said and explain why their words were wrong, or at least give you the quote so you can make your own decision to decide if you agree with me. But it almost seems that that and despite the fact that I think we can all agree that Trump is just not good for the country. I've never thought he was a good person. For years, I haven't felt that way. Maybe 10 years or so, I've just thought he was a jerk. But it seems that we want to sort of pay attention to these political tidal waves that happen, where everyone sort of just says,
Mm-hmm.
oh, this person's bad, and you ask them, well, why? Explain exactly why they're bad. I know I can ask you that question because you're smart, but and thoughtful about it. But some people, it's like, well, because he's just bad. And a lot of times they don't know, right? And I think it's important for people to know, be able to know exactly, like, be able to sort through and delineate exactly what issue that they have. Because when you're talking about the Latino community, you're talking about a very broad, very diverse community, as you mentioned, and I think that also speaks to the peculiar contrast to the fact that even though the community is very diverse with people from so many different backgrounds, just to lump the Latino community into one box would be absolutely insane, right? But at the same time, you see this unity here in terms of just how strong the backlash was against Trump. I mean, people from all backgrounds were going
Mm-hmm.
at him. It wasn't just Mexicans or just any particular group. So let me ask you this. First of all, I don't know about you, but I personally think that if Trump had said something like that about black people, he probably would have gotten a few people that were upset. Black Twitter would have went crazy. They would have memed him to death, right? But leading civil rights organizations probably would have stood down. At some point, unless the Democrats gave them permission to go after Trump, right? We kind of do what the Democrats tell us to do. What do you think would have happened if Trump had made a statement like that about people of color?
He
Or
did
sorry,
make it about
well,
people of
sorry,
color.
sorry, scratch that. I didn't mean to say that. I meant to say black people in particular, African Americans. I shouldn't have said people of color because that's
Well, I mean, we know what's happening right now with the 7 churches that have been burnt down, and nobody's talking about it. It's the same thing that would have happened with Trump had he said that about Black Americans. And this is the thing that I want people to watch. Number one, there's so many nuances in what's going on from a political perspective, from a presidential run perspective, and just from leadership lessons to be learned, communication lessons to be learned. So the first thing that I want people to see is that I don't think there's anybody in either camp, the Republican or the Democrat, that really thinks that Donald Trump has a chance to be president. So why let him run like that? The Republican committee, the Republican National Committee has some power to pull, and they put people in places, etc. Just like the Democratic National Committee. So why is this being allowed to happen? That's the first critical thinking question that you want to ask yourself. And the second is that watching what's happening in terms of the backlash that he has received is a great lesson in understanding a shifting market and the shifting power base. And so when you hit people where it hurts in their pockets, then regardless of whether they're racist or not vocal about it or not, they may still continue that rhetoric behind closed doors, but at least they won't say it when a camera's in their face. And so you're not, quote unquote, curing racism by voting with your dollars. You're simply asserting your power to change the narrative, the public discourse about it. So let's not get confused about what's happening. You're not converting anybody into being anti-racists by voting with your dollars. Um, but then thirdly, there is a conversation about this separation, that there's this the black community does things a particular way, and by black I mean black American, because there's black Latinos as well, right? But the black American community has a certain culture, a certain zeitgeist, a certain way they do things, etc. And it's a they. And then there's the Latino community, and they do things a certain way, and they have their own different issues in terms of immigration, in terms of culture, etc. And they do things a certain way, and it's also a they. And I think that when we can see Black, Latino, and other people of color standing together, just like Latinos do within ourselves. Like he said that about Mexicans, and yet Puerto Ricans came to the fore, Dominicans came to the fore, Chileans, you know what I mean, etc. When you see that level of unity and compassion that's within the Latino community, when we stand behind Mexicans, when you see that as a whole from people of color, you will definitely see that tidal wave and that critical mass where you cannot have those public discourse conversations, particularly when you're planning to lead the nation. It's just not acceptable.
Interesting. And this is my last question, then I'm gonna let you go because I know you are a busy executive, and I just am so gracious when you give us your time. Um, I'm curious to know, what's your perception about the relationship that African Americans perceive that they have with the Latino community, right? It seems that they're because one community, we've been here for a while. We're a little stagnant in terms of our growth relative to the Latino community, which is kind of exploding in population and power. Some black people that I know feel a little bit left behind. They kind of left out of what's happening in America. But at the same time, that's contrasted. At least I know in my personal life, for example, some of the people that I respect the most, that I just appreciate the most in my life, are part of the Black and Latino community, like yourself, Dorian Chandler, who is just this film director that I work with all the time, literally every week. And I was actually, I don't know if you know this might be TMI, but I was actually engaged to a woman who was Black Latina. And what was interesting to me was I didn't even know that she was Latina until maybe we dated 2 or 3 weeks, because she was an AKA. She didn't. There was no accent or anything, so I didn't even think to ask. And then I found out later, and what I was really interested in, now that I reflect on it, is just the seamless transition into the black community that she had, as well as some
Hmm.
other people. Dorian, my friend Dorian, she's not. It's not like she hides her family's background. I think she's Puerto Rican and black, but it's sort of like if you just say, "Are you a black woman?" She says, "Yes." I mean, it's not like I'm black and something else. It's like, no, I'm African American. I'm black. I'm one of you. But then it's sort of like this ability to kind of navigate and not even both worlds, but in this mixed world where all these things are kind of happening, and there's just this sort of this perception of this amazing unity, intermarriage and stuff like
Hmm.
that. So to me, that contrasts with some of what I've heard politically, where some black people just feel like they're kind of sort of being drowned out and left behind. The perception of what's happening with jobs, right? That whole debate about immigration and jobs. Give me your take on some of that in terms of how you see this dynamic playing out between the black community and various aspects of the Latino community. We both agree that you can't lump everybody together. So maybe you can help me think this through. What do you think?
Well, there's a lot in there. There's a lot to unpack with that topic. I think one of the things that we have to keep in mind is the color issue. Like I said, in the Latino community, you have people that look like you and me, and then there are people who look like Britney Spears. There's people that look like Jackie Chan, all within the same Latin community. So it's not a race thing; it's an ethnicity that encompasses the entire racial spectrum. So that's issue number one. That we have to be conscious that we as a Latino community um, navigate a lot of racial ambiguity. That's the first thing. The second thing is that there are some cultural differences. You know, there's and you're to your point about not lumping everybody together. There are some nuances. You know, there's things that happen in Mexico that do not happen in the Dominican Republic, or that happen in Brazil or in Cuba that do not happen in Venezuela, for example. Um, so we do have to be conscious of that. But instead of using that as a reason to continue a separatist agenda, use those differences. And I say this in executive board meetings all the time when we're talking about team building inside of a company. You're supposed to be different. You're supposed to have a different zone of genius. You're supposed to, function differently, et cetera. I don't want somebody who's good at numbers running customer service. I want them in accounting. I want them in bookkeeping. I want them doing financial analysis, and vice versa. I don't want somebody who is good with people but sucks at numbers in the financial department. I don't want it. And so we just have to kind of take the filters off. And I think sometimes we get so drowned out in the political correctness and this inclusivity consciousness, et cetera. And it's like, but we've got to be smart about this. We've got to be strategists about this. And so use the differences to harness a greater message, to harness a greater power. In there's strength in numbers, right? So when we use those numbers, then we can really cause change. And to the point about Black people being left behind, whereas Latin people are perhaps in some areas moving ahead of them, I say that there is a cultural difference in terms of immigration. When Latin people come to this country, they come voluntarily. That's difference number one. When Black people got here, Black Americans got here, they came here under duress, which is of course an understatement, but you know what I mean. Um, and so there's a point of like, there's nothing owed to me. You know, when my parents came to this country, they're like, nobody owes me anything. I have to fight for everything. I have to set it up myself. I have to avail myself of whatever resources I have. And when help wasn't coming, that's not a surprise and it's not a disappointment. That's just, of course, no help is coming. Nobody owes me anything. And so there's the sense of like, I'm lack of entitlement, I think, justified or not. That actually helps people to be proactive, and it helps people to be even more resourceful, etc. Um, and also, there's also a common thing about I don't need you, I don't expect you to understand me or my culture or my language, or like we know we're coming into a hostile environment, you know, and so the first thing that somebody does when they come into this country from a Latin country is look for your people. You know, where are the other Dominicans, or where are the other Spanish speaking places, and where's the Spanish speaking bodega, you know. And so there's a certain some familiarity, a sense of normalcy, a sense of continuity in such a strange world that kind of mitigates the culture shock. And then once you establish yourself financially, you know, you get a job and you get some schooling, etc., then you start getting involved, volunteering in your community and getting involved in social, civic, and political causes, etc. But it's definitely something of put the oxygen mask on yourself first. And I think that that's one of the lessons that all of us can learn, is that whenever you're trying to move forward a particular cause that really really matters to you, regardless of race, regardless of gender, you know, I'm not speaking about a specific race of people, even though you asked specifically about the Black American community. But whenever you want to move a cause along, the first thing that you have to do is empower yourself. And so that's I think one of the reasons why that Harry Belafonte point about celebrities using their celebrity for good was so poignant, because it's like, you know, once you you can't help the poor by being poor, so you became rich, and that's the win-win. You know what I'm talking about? That Jay-Z quote. So it's like, all right, I heard the lyrics, now let's see the evidence, and so I think that it is important to just stop talking and start creating.
Well, I
I
love
think
it.
we've had enough rhetoric.
I love it. I love it. Well, I can't agree with you more, and I think that those words can come from a smarter, more capable person. So I know I'm always educated when I talk to you, and it sounds like you've got stuff going on in the background. I hear it sounds like somebody's cleaning up or something, and I know that we had a hard break anyway because you have a meeting to go to. So I'm going to go ahead and say thank you very much for your time, Dr. Argando. I truly appreciate it. Oh, can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you.
Oh, okay, okay. Well, I want to say thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. Absolutely, and everybody. This is Dr.
Thank
Monica
you.
Ogando. She's away in Florida now, so maybe that's why she was a little distracted with stuff. But don't worry, the knowledge is always good.
I'm here.
Yes,
I'm
she
100%
is
present.
she is always here.
We women, we can multitask. We can actually pay attention to seven things at the same time.
That is so. Is it exactly seven, not six, not eight? Really?
That's
Ah.
what I've been able to count. Yes.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if there was some scientific study because I've seen that. I've seen where women can just, their brains can just be in two or three places at once, and I can't do that. If I'm distracted, I'm gone. So,
Yes.
anyway, well, thank you so much, Dr. Ogondo, and
You're welcome.
absolutely, thank you. I appreciate your time. And everybody, I'm Dr. Boyce Watkins from Your Black World. This is Dr. Monica Ogondo. Please follow her. What's your website, Monica?
MonicaOganda.com.
Okay, that's Monikah, right?
Yep.
So Kah Ogando, correct?
You got it.
All right,
That's right.
awesome, awesome. All right, well, until we meet again, please stay strong, be blessed, and be educated. We are gone. Peace.
Thanks, everybody.